Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So raindrop reaches terminal velocity. So thereafter the terminal velocity is constant. Okay. So there are three forces acts on raindrop while falling. One is gravity, another one is buoyant force, then a drag force. Okay. So you know the gravity because it's a cell, I mean weight of that raindrop. Then buoyant force is when the raindrop is falling, it replaces the air immediately under that drop. Okay, so this air has some weight, and it applies that equal amount of force in upward direction equal to the weight of that replaced air volume. Third force is drag force. Okay, so drag force is when rain is falling down. So there is a frictional forces on the raindrop. They resist the downward movement. So this is called as drag force, and the drag force is proportional to the velocity square. So when the raindrop starts falling, at that time velocity is zero or velocity is very. I mean, as it accelerating, velocity slowly increasing. So during those times, uh, the drag force is small. So the gravitational force is more dominant, so the raindrop gets acceleration. But as its velocity increases, drag force increases, and at certain point of time, all the three forces will be in equilibrium. So the drag force plus a buoyant force is equal to the gravity. So that is given by this equation. Okay. So from this equation, uh, we don't know what is the terminal velocity. All other terms are known because the CD, this is coefficient of drag. So coefficient of drag is experimentally found out. Okay, for a spherical shape of object. I mean, there are a lot of experiments with different shapes with different diameters. So CD value for already determined. So in this, everything no except Vt. So Vt is given by this equation, square root of 4gd divided by 3cd into 4w by rho m minus 1. So let's do one numerical example. Okay. So calculate the terminal velocity of a 1 mm diameter raindrop falling in still air at the standard atmospheric pressure of 101.2 kilopascal, and the ambient temperature is 20 degrees centigrade. So at this temperature, we can find rho W, so that is 998 kg per meter cube, and the CD is given as 0.671. And at this temperature, again at 20 degrees centigrade, air density is 1.0 kg per meter cube, and atmospheric pressure is given, that is 101.3 kilopascal. So just we need to substitute the values in this equation. Then the terminal velocity is obtained as 4.02 meter per second. Uh, so you see that the raindrop size is 1 mm diameter, and this 1 mm diameter raindrop, it attains 4.02 meter per second, and it's constant throughout its journey towards surface. And you see that you see this curve, which is raindrop size versus terminal velocity. Okay, so we can see that as the raindrop size increases, terminal velocity increases, and approximately around 5 mm, terminal velocity will no longer increase with diameter. So the maximum velocity of a raindrop, irrespective of its size, is 8 meter per second. And the CD values are given for different range of diameters. Okay, these CD values are obtained using wind tunnel experiments. Okay. So Vinternelle is a kind of a flume, but it's a closed flume, and the air is blown from one end, and other side uh, we can fix any object such as a sphere or a plate or anything. Then we can connect it to a strain gauge, and for a given velocity, we can find the drag force on that one. From that one, using this equation, that's drag force is CD rho A V square by 2. We can calculate CD value. So in the previous class, we have calculated the precipitable amount of water, and there is another important term, that is intensity of the rainfall. Okay, so intensity of the rainfall is uh, that is rainfall depth uh, per as a function of time. So intensity units are centimeter per second or meter per second. So mathematically, uh, we can calculate intensity of the rainfall if that ambient uh, parameters like surface pressure, and then uh, specific humidity, temperature, and mean velocity are given. Okay? So let's derive the equation to calculate intensity of rainfall. So this is the model. So this dashed line is a control volume. Okay. So this control volume has got three regions. At the base, it is the region one. So this is inflow region, where the moist air comes into this control volume. Then this middle region is a uplift region. So where the moisture rises and condenses, and that becomes rain. In the top, it is the outflow region. So once the water is lost from the moist air, then it will becomes a dry air. So the dry air leaves from this outflow region from here, and this outflown air again, because it's a cold, because as it rises it becomes cold, and then uh, due to its increased weight, it descends back, and during descending again, because its temperature is increasing, it increases holding capacity of moisture, and so the moisture again enters it uh, into the control volume from inflow region. So let's apply Reynolds continuity equation. Okay, so we are applying the continuity of water vapor. Okay, so this dot mv, this is nothing but rate of change of mass of water vapor within a earlier, I mean in the previous class, we have estimated precipitable amount of water. Similarly, we can calculate intensity of rainfall. Okay? So intensity of rainfall is, it is a rainfall in a given time. So this is the finite volume model. It has got three regions. So near to the surface is the inflow region, from where the moisture enters into this cell, and then this middle region is a uplift region, so through which the air rises and condenses, so that becomes rainfall. Once this air loses the moisture content, then it becomes dry air, and that leaves from outflow region. And this dry air again, because dry air has higher molecular higher mass, so it descends, and during descent, it again gets moisture content. Then it becomes moisture, and again it goes into the control volume. So let us apply the continuity of water vapor. So this is Reynolds transport theorem. This is continuity equation, continuity of water vapor. So this dot mv, this is rate of change of mass of water vapor within a control system, within a system. So that's equal to rate of change of mass of water vapor within a control volume plus net outflow of mass of net outflow rate of mass of water vapor. So this is the basic equation. Okay, and for steady flow, so the precipitation equal to the net inflow of water vapor. Okay, because moisture is coming into the control volume, then it's condensing, and whatever moisture it has, that has become rain, and dry air is going out from there. So, or the air which is leaving the control volume, it has a little moisture content. So that net inflow of water vapor, so that is equal to the uh, amount of rainfall. So this is rho W. This is nothing but mass density of water. Okay, this I into A. I is centimeter per second, and A is area. So that is meter square. So this I we can write in SI units as meter per second. So this is nothing but the mass flow rate of rain. So this equation is written here. Then there are one this net outflow of mass from the control volume. So that is written here. Okay. So the region, if you look at the figure, this is the control volume. So the inflow, that is out inlet size, that is equal to delta z1, whereas the outlet size, that is equal to delta z2, because we are considering only the vertical plane. Okay, so the height of this region, that is equal to delta z1, and height of the region 2 is delta z2. So uh, so the same equation, uh, the net water vapor coming into the control volume minus mass flow rate leaving out of control volume. So that is equal to the mass flow rate of rainfall. So let's write this as equation 1, because QV, this is the specific humidity. Okay, so this is QV into rho A, this is moisture content. Okay, so the inflow moisture content minus outflow moisture content into the inlet and outlet volumes correspondingly. So that gives this rainfall rate. So because from the inflow and outflow, uh, the moisture is coming in, as well as dry air is also coming in, and from the outlet also moist air going out, and as well as dry air is going out. So we have to apply continuity equation for both moist air and as well as dry air. So now we'll apply the continuity equation for dry air. Okay. So for dry air, so whatever the dry air is coming in, and that dry air is going out. So the inlet, the dry air rho d, this is nothing but rho a minus rho v. Okay, so that is and rho v is equal nothing but rho a into qv. So rho a 1 minus qv v delta z at 2, that is region 2 minus rho a 1 minus q v delta z 1 f pi d. So this is the continuity equation for dry air. Okay, so because whatever the dry air is coming in, and the same amount of dry air is going out, and the rest is falling. That whatever the moisture coming in, that is becoming rainfall. So from this equation, we'll find this rho A V delta Z2. Okay, so that is equal to just a simple algebra. We can get this equation, and we need to substitute this rho A V delta Z2 in equation X. Then we will get intensity of rainfall. So we'll apply one numerical. We'll solve a numerical example. Then you can understand this. So it's a thunderstorm cell model which has a 5 kilometer diameter, cloud base of 1.5 kilometer. So cloud base of 1.5 kilometer is clouds are at 1.5 kilometer from surface. So the inflow region height is 1.5 kilometer, and the air temperature is given as 30 degrees centigrade, and pressure is given as 101.3 kilopascal at the surface, and the wind speed is given as 1 meter per second, and adiabatic lap rate is given as 7.5 degrees Celsius per kilometer, and the average outflow elevation is 10 kilometers. That is the thunderstorm cell height is 10 kilometers. So we need to calculate precipitation intensity from this storm, and we can also calculate what proportion of the incoming moisture is precipitated, and then what is the rate of release of latent heat during this condensation. So uh, wind velocity is given as 1 meter per second. Delta Z1 is given as 1500 meters. Then this is the water density, 1000 kg per meter cube. Then the diameter of the cell is given as 5000 meters. So uh, we have to set up this table. So elevation at zero, temperature is given as 30 degree centigrade, and we need to convert it into Kelvin, that is 303, and air pressure at the surface is given as 101.3 uh, kilopascal. Students, I think please off your mics, okay? Because somebody mic is on, and there's a disturbance. So air pressure is 101.3. Okay. So we have to set up this table. So we can calculate it. We can calculate from state equation. That is rho is equal P by RP. Then vapor pressure. So vapor pressure, because since the temperature is given, we can use equation that Ts is equal to 611 exponential of 7.
Sir, we can't see your presentation.
You can't see it, but
I can see.
It is
No,
okay
no,
now, sir.
it's okay. Okay, okay. There is a lag in because today internet is poor in IIT campus. At least in my home, this Wi-Fi is poor. So, vapor pressure we can calculate using the vapor pressure equation that Vs equals 611 exponential of 17.270 divided by 237.3 plus T. Right? So, we can, because vapor pressure is only just a function of temperature, so we can calculate this. Then specific humidity. Okay. So we can calculate specific humidity. That is nothing but QV. So again, at 1.5 kilometer, using that temperature gradient, so we can calculate temperature as 19. Similarly, pressure also we can use. Yesterday we have derived an equation that is P2 is equal to T1 into T2 by T1 or G by alpha RA. So using that equation, we can get pressure. Then once pressure is known, temperature is known, then we can get air density. Then also we can get vapor pressure. So vapor pressure is just a function of temperature. Then we can calculate specific humidity QB. So, uh, but air is living at height 10 kilometers. Okay. So we can again get temperature there as minus 45, and so we can get again air pressure and air density, wave pressure, and specific humidity. So, uh, so just now we have derived this equation that rainfall intensity is equal rho 4 into rho A V delta Z1 by rho WD QV1 minus QV2 by 1 minus QV2. So, QV1 because QV1 is that is the average of at the average quantities at the inlet. Okay. So specific humidity is given 0. We have calculated at surface as 0.0261 and at 1.5 kilometer height we calculate as 0.0160. So average of this that comes 0.0210 and QV2 is 0.0002. See, because we have not taken here another uh, element or at the outlet. Why? Because there the pressure and as well as temperature they're almost constant. Okay, because they decrease as we go higher from Earth's surface, and once we reach this tropopause, then for certain distance, some height, temperature, and pressure are like almost constant. So therefore, we have not taken another element here. So so there is no need of averaging here. So from this equation, we get I is equal to 2.72 to 10 power minus 5 meter per second. So that is equivalent to 9.8 centimeter per hour. So now we can calculate the mass flow rate of precipitation. Okay, that is nothing but rho W I A. So the area is it is 5 kilometer diameter. The circulation diameter is 5 kilometer. So area is calculated as 1.96 into 10 power 7. Uh, uh, so I already calculated that is 2.7 into 10 power minus 5 meter per second. So when we substitute IA and OW, we'll get the mass flow rate of precipitation. So that is equal to 5.34 into 10.5 kg per second. So this is the mass flow rate of precipitation is taking place in this storm. Then the incoming moisture inflow region, so that is given by rho A QV V delta Z at inflow region into pi d. So when we substitute, we know in the inclusion what is the QV rho A, and the wind velocity is given as 1 meter per second. So when we substitute all these quantities, we'll get the inflow mass inflow rate of mass of water vapor, that is 5.39 into 10.5 kg per second. So you see that in this convective thunderstorm, the inflow mass is inflow rate of mass of water vapor, so that is 5.39 10 power 5, whereas the amount of rainfall is equal 5.34 10 power 5 kg per second. So approximately 99% of inflow moisture turned into rainfall. Now, so we can calculate what is the release of latent heat, because when this water vapor condenses as a liquid, it releases latent heat. Okay, so that is the latent heat of water vapor is given as 2.5 into 10 power 6 joule per kg, and mp, so this is nothing but the amount of uh, uh, mass flow rate of rainfall, so that is 5.34 into 10 power 5. So from this we can calculate the amount of energy released during this thunderstorm, that is equal to 1.25 into 10 power 4 watts. Okay. So you see that in any thunderstorm, immense amount of energy is released. If you look at thermal power plants, they're kind of 3 megawatts or 5 megawatts, sometimes 1 megawatts. So 1 megawatt is equal 10 power 6 watts. So a 3000 megawatts thermal power plant that releases that gives energy 3 into 10 power 9, okay, watts. So you see that one thunderstorm is equivalent to around uh, more than 1000 thermal power plants. So uh, this is just demonstrates that the energy released in thunderstorms is very high. So next I'm going to discuss different types of precipitation. Okay, so there are different types of precipitation. Okay, rain, freezing rain, sleet, snow, hail. Okay, especially at mid and higher latitudes, uh, rainfall is less, but snow is more there. Then during the thunderstorms, even in the tropical regions, we'll get ice balls. Okay, that is called as hail. And in colder regions, uh, there is a freezing rain and sleet. Okay, so let's go deep into types of precipitations. Okay, so the in the rainfall, the raindrop size is more than zero point 0.5 mm. It can go up to 5 mm. Okay, so initially the raindrop is a spherical shape, but as it descends, due to the uh, drag force, due to the upward pressure, its shape is distorted. Okay, bottom become flat, and so when and also it gathers moisture content, then it little bit grow bigger. So once it grows big, then the drop is unstable because of these intermolecular forces become weak. Okay, so therefore, then some amount of water from this drop again evaporated back to the atmosphere. So rain forms mainly by condensation, but just condensation alone not doesn't become rainfall, because the rainfall size should be more than certain threshold. Okay, so that is that threshold diameter of raindrop that is attained from these two processes, that is collision and coalescence. So collision means these small teeny droplets they collide with each other, and they grow by aggregating those teeny droplets. So then freezing rain, you see that in the tropical regions, the this is the air temperature versus altitude. You can see that temperature is maximum near the surface. Then due to the lapse rate, the temperature decreases as we go higher altitudes. But in cold regions, okay, like latitudes more than 60 degree, because there is a snow or ice formation on the surface. So therefore, there is a inverse temperature profile. That means near the surface there is a freezing, but as we go up, the temperature increases. Then after reaching maximum temperature, then it decreases due to the adiabatic collapse rate. So the freezing rain and sleet generally they are result of this inverse temperature profile. So what happens because these clouds they form at around 3 kilometer height. Okay, so at that altitude the temperature is very cold. Temperature is freezing. So therefore, when water condenses, the snow flakes or ice crystals are formed, and as they fall toward the earth's surface, they become uh, liquid droplets. Then again, when they are reaching the surface, because again due to the freezing, these liquid droplets become ice pellets. So this is called as freezing rain. Then next is the sleet. Okay, sleet is similar to the uh, freezing rain, but in sleet, so throughout its descent from clouds to the surface, maximum distance it covers as ice pellet. So I will show another figure where to understand it better. Then snow. Snow is generally found in mid and high latitudes. For example, altitude above, like you can say 50 degree, then uh, uh, mostly there is a snowfall. So, for example, this Canada and upper regions of United States. So where the snowfall occurs, because the water, I mean, when this clouds condenses, so the water vapor it becomes snow. Okay, and because the snow is a snow crystal is a six-sided hexagon. Okay, so this is a dendritic nature. So you can see that in each direction, then another hexagonal formed. Okay, so uh, when they drop towards the surface due to the collision and aggregation, these snowflakes they increase in size. So mainly the snow occurs from frontal uplifting. So that is mainly cold front uplifting. So already I explained in yesterday's class what is cold front uplifting. Okay. Because when the wind blows from poles towards a warmer region, the cold wind, which is a higher velocity, then warm wind. Okay. So and the cold wind has a higher mass. So therefore, it actually penetrates the warm wind, and that leading edge of the cold wind, that is called as cold front, so that becomes very steep. Okay, so therefore the warm air rises into the atmosphere, so that becomes a thunderstorm. This is figure, this explains better. Okay, see that in tropical areas, see this here, this pink color, this reflects the warm weather, whereas this blue represents cold weather. So in the tropical regions, only very higher altitudes, there is a freezing temperatures. But for most of the height, the temperatures is above freezing temperatures. So you can see that initially the water vapor condenses into snow. When it is descending due to the warm weather, it becomes rain droplets and reaches surface. In freezing rain, you see again. I mean this snow, it becomes liquid droplets, but near the surface the temperature is freezing. So therefore, these droplets again they become ice pellets. Okay, so this is called as freezing rain. And if you look at sleet, the warm region is very small. Okay, so the snow when it's passing through this warm region, that becomes liquid, and again during this freezing temperatures, these droplets become ice pellets, and they touch surface. So this is called as sleet. And whereas snow, the the entire height is under freezing conditions. So therefore, so whatever this condensed snow, so that becomes that reaches Earth's surface as a snow. So there is no phase conversion in this in its descent. So the another type of precipitation is hail. Okay, because hail is so these are the hail. Its size is it consists of ice pellets where the pellet diameter is more than 5 mm. Okay, so these hails, uh, it can occur anywhere. It can occur even tropical regions. Even sometimes in India, I mean even south, uh, we can receive we receive hail. So the main mechanism for hail is the uprising currents. Okay, so I will explain using a figure. You better understand from that one. You see that uh, here the water condenses, that becomes liquid droplets. So these droplets, they're falling towards earth, but these droplets size is very small, and because of this atmospheric circulation, okay, due to this weather pattern or wind pattern, there is a warm wind, it is blowing upwards. Okay, so when it is blowing upwards, this warm wind, it actually carries these tiny droplets back to the higher altitudes, and these tiny droplets, they will be under eddy movement. Okay, for sufficient time, and then again these These drops, when they are under the circulation, they hit other drops, other tiny droplets, and they grow bigger size. Once the size increases around around 1 mm or 2 mm, or more than that, then due to the gravity and the cool downdraft, these uh, freezed droplets, they reach surface. So here this figure also shows that, okay, because of due to the wind pattern, sometime the warm moisture, it rises upwards, okay, uh, with a higher velocity, so that carries these small droplets into higher altitudes. Okay, so during this transfer, due to the collision and aggregation, these tiny droplets, their size grows, and once they try, when their size goes very big, like 5 mm, then due to its self weight and gravitational forces, it is drawn toward the surface. So while during descent, it loses some of the weight, but the droplets are considerable size. Okay, they are more than 5 mm size. You can see that this figure, uh, uh, it is the photo is taken during a hailstorm. So you can see that uh, ice balls, okay, hitting the ground. So measurement of measurement of precipitation. So we need to measure the precipitation, because for storing or otherwise, this precipitation, because this is part of hydrological cycle. Okay, it is part of it becoming evaporation, and part of it becoming surface flow, and part of it going to subsurface flow. So we need to measure how much rainfall is occurring, because it has got many applications. Okay, because to design stormwater drains, or to design bridges, to design dams, etc., we need to we need to measure amount of rainfall we are receiving. So generally, the measured precipitation is called depth of rainfall. Depth of rainfall. Okay. So what is depth of rainfall? Suppose the amount of rainfall is collected on a flat surface without any leaks, then uh, the the amount of water will be standing on the surface. Okay, so that is called the height of water standing on the surface. That is called depth of. So measured uh, generally in India, it is measured in millimeters, but in US it is measured in inches. So then rainfall intensity, because how strong the rain, that designated as that is defined as rainfall intensity, so which is nothing but depth of rainfall per unit time. So this precipitation or rainfall, it is measured using rain gauge, and the rain gauges are different types. Okay, so based on the recording or non recording, they are classified as recording or non-recording. So non-recording gauge, this is very simple gauge. Okay, this is also called as Simon's gauge. The schematic is shown in this figure. Okay, so it is a circular inlet, a diameter of 12.5 centimeter. There is a funnel. So once the rainfall reaches this opening, circular opening, so that goes into this glass bottle through this funnel. So this glass bottle, so which has got which has got a measuring scale. So you can see the a picture of new modern rain gauge. So this is made of fiberglass. So you can see that there is a uh, glass beaker with measuring tape to that. So, so this is a typical setup of rain gauge. The important thing is when we fix because we have to find a location such that uh, when we draw horizontal lines and when we draw lines with 45-degree horizontal, they should not meet any building or any tree. So if we draw from this edge, if we draw one 45-degree line, so it should not intersect any nearby building or tree. So that is one rule. So for non-recording gauges, uh, so one employee, I mean, who is in charge of this rainfall measurements, every day he will take measurements at 8:30 every day, 8:30 a.m. every day. So what he collects, because this is a renewable kind of fluid here, so you rinse it and then you take this glass bottle, then he measures amount of rainfall occurred in the previous day. So this is next is recording gauges. So recording gauges, few types, tipping bucket type and weighing bucket and siphon rainfall gauge. So first let us discuss this tipping bucket gauge. So this is a schematic and of course each country has its own standards. Okay, but this is a rough sketch. You see that the diameter of the receiving inlet, that is 30 centimeters. Then there is a funnel. So this funnel, through this funnel, rain falls into these two small uh, buckets. Okay, so they got a hinge. They pivot to this pivoted here. So what happens when it collects certain amount of rainfall, especially that 0.25 mm of rainfall. Then this bucket tilts and the water is collected into the collecting beaker or measuring tube. So, uh, because in many countries the recording gauges are of tipping gauge type, because this tipping bucket it is connected to a data account system. So the time between two tippings can be measured. So this tipping bucket gauge, it gives the rainfall intensity. You see, this is the typical output of a tipping bucket gauge. You see that these vertical lines, they give the tipping. So in between the vertical lines, so there is no rainfall. So here to here there is no rainfall, then there is a rainfall. Okay, and we know what is the height of this step, and we know how much time taken for water rising from here to here. So we can get the intensity of rainfall at that time. Next is a waiting type gauge. So this is the schematic. Okay.
Sir, could you show
So
the previous slide?
yeah. Okay. This is a typical recording from tipping bucket gauge. Okay. So these are tippings. So you can see that the amount of water accumulated is
Sir,
increasing.
slide number 31.
You mean this? Okay. So do you have any doubt in this slide?
While you were teaching, I couldn't see it.
Okay. Okay, because of that, I think lag. Maybe the internet is not very strong, either my end or your end. So I go now. This is I'm explaining waiting type rain gauge. So this is a schematic. Okay, what is collected in this bucket? The bucket is placed on a spring balance. Okay, and it is connected to a pen which records the water received, amount of water received in this bucket on a revolving drum. So this revolving drum is connected to a clock. So its revolutions are according to some specific time. So I mean the speed is fixed, constant. So this waiting type gauge, it gives the mass flow rate. We can say mass curve. So you can see that this is a pen and this is a drum. Okay, so it rotates with a predetermined speed, and this pen it is calibrated with the amount of water collected. I mean, its raise and drop of this pen is calibrated with the amount of water collected in the bucket. So next type is siphonic rain gauge. Okay, so this is again a schematic. So this is the inlet of rain gauge and water collected in this chamber through this funnel, and there is a float. Okay, and float is connected uh, with a pin, and that pen it records the amount of rainfall received on a drum again, which rotates with a constant speed. You can see because this is a chamber which receives rainfall, and once the rainfall reaches to the height of this bend, then due to the cyclonic action, this chamber become emptied. So this chamber is shown here. You can see there is a uh, pipe. Okay, so then water reaches up to this bend, then through the siphonic action, this chamber emptied. So this siphonic rain gauge is a standard recording type in India. So it gives mass curve, and once we draw mass curve, we can get rainfall intensity from that. So this is a recording of a typical recording of cyclonic rain gauge. So you can see that as the rainfall is collected in the chamber, uh, this curve is increasing. Okay, so then after reaching the full level of chamber, then due to the siphonic action, the water is empty. Again, uh, the water collected in this chamber, it is increasing. So these are important recording rain gauges. And nowadays, uh, governments they're also depending on weather radars for rainfall recordings. So this weather radar is an instrument. Uh, it is used to locate and measure precipitation in amount of precipitation, intensity of precipitation, and to determine the type of rain, whether it is a rain or snow or hail, etc. So advantage of this weather radar is because it has got bigger, it can measure rainfall in a bigger catchment area because these rain gauges, uh, we need many number of rain gauges in a catchment. Of course, the number of rain gauge increases with the catchment size increasing the catchment size, and we have to depend on manual labor to take the measurements. But whereas weather radar, it's the aerial extent is quite high. So now there are a lot of advanced. Earlier, the weather radars were not very accurate, but latest radars are very accurate. So this weather radar that mainly uses Doppler effect to measure intensity and direction of rain. So what is Doppler effect? Because this is like an observer and a moving object. So moving object, uh, it is making some kind of electromagnetic wave, whether it can be sound or light, etc. And this moving object, when it comes towards the observer, uh, the frequency increases. Okay, the frequency of electromagnetic wave increases. And if suppose that object is going away from the observer, then frequency of the electromagnetic wave generated by this moving object decreases. Okay, so during this the relative motion, we can calculate the velocity of these drops. I mean downward velocity. So that is nothing but intensity, and as well as the direction of the rain. Also, we can also find the drop size. So you can see that this is a typical weather radar. Okay, so this picture I got it from Google. So this is mainly because weather radars, they not only measures precipitation, they also measures wind speed and what is the amount of what moisture present in air and the temperature. So they're kind of multi-purpose. Analysis of precipitation data. Okay, so the precipitation, because we need the intensity of precipitation and how much precipitation occurred. Okay, so they are represented by these two curves, mass curve and rainfall autograph. Mass curve gives cumulative depth of rainfall as a function of time. I'll show the figure. This is a mass curve. Okay, this is the accumulated rainfall depth, and it is plotted with respect to time. And you can see that up to, because here the axis is in days. Okay, so up to you can say like one day there is no rain. Okay, then there is a storm, and the storm subsided here, then there is again calm, then again another storm. So the this cumulative mass curve, its application is we can find intensity at any point. Okay, by drawing a tangent at any point on this curve, by measuring its slope. I mean, slope of the tangent gives intensity of rainfall. So then rainfall autograph. This is rainfall depth or rainfall intensity as a function of time. So so this hydrograph, this is looks like an histogram. The rainfall distribution is represented in discrete time intervals. Okay. So we'll So we will plot one mass curve and as well as hytograph from this example. So you can see that this first column, this gives time. Okay. The second column, this gives the rainfall collected during those intervals. Okay. So 0 time to 5 minutes, the rainfall collected is 0.02 inch, and from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, the rainfall collected is 0.34. So this is not a cumulative one. Every interval, it is a rainfall which is independent of the other. So from 10 to 15, again the rainfall collected, rainfall depth is 0.10 inch. So you can see the figure. This is the rainfall hydrograph. Okay. So this is it represents rainfall collected in discrete time intervals. Okay, like 0 to 5 minutes, the rainfall is around 0.02 inch. Then from 5 to 10, the rainfall collected is around 0.34 inch. Okay. So the rainfall collected we at discrete time intervals is represented are known as rainfall hydrograph, and the unit is either mm or centimeter, and mm per hour or inch per hour also can be centimeter per hour. So this is the first two columns, they are the inputs. Okay. So now we can plot cumulative rainfall. Okay. For cumulative rainfall, so we have to add amount of incrementally we have to add amount of rainfall collected. Like at 0 time, the rainfall is 0, but at 5 minutes, rainfall is 0.02, and in 10 minutes, the total rainfall occurred is 0.36, and at 15 minutes, the total rainfall depth is 0.46. Okay, so these values if incrementally we added, then we will get cumulative rainfall, and plotting of this time versus this cumulative rainfall, that gives mass curve. So this is the mass curve, cumulative rainfall versus time. Now we need to find the rainfall intensities in time intervals of 30 minutes, 1 hour, and 2 hours. Students, somebody mic is on. Okay, so there is a lot of disturbance. Please switch off your. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Please, somebody's mic is on. Okay, so I am getting a lot of disturbance. I request all students to put off your mic. Okay. So now uh, we need to find the rainfall intensity in 30 minutes interval, 1 hour interval, and 2 hours interval. So what we have to do for 30 minutes interval, okay? So in 30 minutes, the amount of rainfall is 0 to 30 minutes. The amount of rainfall is 1.17. Okay. Next, we have to find from 5 minutes to 35 minutes what is the rainfall collected. So that is equal to 1.67 minus 0.02. Okay. That gives 1.65. Next, the rainfall collected from 10 minutes to 40 minutes. So that is 2.17 minus 0.36. Okay, that becomes 1.81. So so on and so forth. We have to calculate each consecutive 30-minute intervals. What is the rainfall occurred? Similarly, we can do for 1 hour. So in first 1 hour, that is 0 to 60 minutes, the rainfall is 3.81, 3.81 inches, and then next to 1 hour, that is 5 to 65. Okay, the rainfall is equal to 4.17 minus zero point 0.02, that becomes 4.15. So we need to calculate like this up to this 150 minutes. Okay, so similarly we can do for 2 hours. Okay, so these are all nothing but rainfall intensities. Okay, so the maximum rainfall in 30 minutes interval, that is 3.07, and the maximum rainfall occurred in 1 hour interval is 5.56, and the maximum rainfall occurred in 2 hours interval is 8.20. And intensity is nothing but amount of rainfall collected divided by the interval. Okay, so this maximum rainfall is 3.07. So 3.07 divided by time, that is half an hour, that equal to 6.14 inch per hour. Similarly, rainfall intensity at 1 hour interval is equal 5.6 divided by 1 hour, that is equal to 5.56. Similarly, for 2 hour time interval, so the maximum rainfall intensity is equal 8.20 divided by 2 hours, that becomes 4.10. So you can see that the maximum rainfall intensity is 6.14. Okay, so look at this figure.